Hey Ryan, I think this is the first time I met you, huh?
Yeah, I think last year we kind of briefly said hi and bye, but in the conference we were both kind of moving two different
Yeah,
directions. So yeah.
sure. So you've been at Plus QA for quite a while.
Yeah, I've been there for 13 plus years now. So
Uh-huh.
done a little
Jeez.
bit of everything there.
Uh-huh.
Started just as
Wow.
a part-time tester and
Uh-huh.
kind of grew from there.
So what do you specialize in as an individual and also as Plus QA?
Yeah, so I mean, I think individually, like my strengths really do lie in working with new clients and really building kind of custom systems. I think that's where Plus QA sort of stands out from a lot of QA companies that are doing similar work but have different structures, is that we really do try to build a team specific to every client. Um, some days that's harder than others. Some days it would be nice to just say, "Hey, you're in bucket one, two, and three," and it all
Sure.
looks the same. But I think for the dev process, we work from clients that are startups. They're reaching out to us, and they've never been had a production facing app yet, and they're wanting QA before that happens, all the way up to enterprise clients that are, we have a team of people supporting full time year round. So those are very different problems to solve. We try to be as efficient as possible, especially in that startup space where money's tight, time is tight. Having a QA team jump in, giving you bugs right away, giving you feedback right away, providing test cases for you that you didn't even know you needed. Um, you know, Exploring corners of the app that maybe as the dev team, didn't look at or didn't think of. It's the classic, QA mindset of touch is the thing that breaks first always, and um, I think that's where, sometimes people come to us and they're like, we had a previous partner and they had us doing this bucket of hours or this style of thing. Like, do you do that? And it's like, we can, but like, let's talk more about what it is that you need and what is it that where's your product at this time? And maybe we can adjust that. And that's been really successful for us, over time.
So what does I was wondering, what clients use or what they want you to use as far as their defect management system. Do most use Jira still?
Yeah. So again, I think to our challenge to sort of adapt to clients' needs, we kind of pick up what they're using existing. So we use Jira, we've used Linear, we've used Bugzilla, we've used a little bit of everything.
Oh,
And then eventually we built our own platform internally. So we have a platform we call Test Platform. And one of the big reasons that we built it internally was, one, we do work with kind of the startup clients or those quick agency clients that don't necessarily have time to onboard us into their system for a short project, or they're just not that mature yet as a process. So we allow our clients to use that. And then also we wanted to build a tool that was fully accessible. So we have a big team of accessibility testers, and some of them need assistive technologies like screen readers and things like that. And a lot of the existing tools like Jira do a really poor job of supporting a lot of those assistive technologies. So we've wanted to, be able to support our testers and get their insight and bugs as well. So we kind of do a little bit of everything. Our test platform also is where we store most all our test cases, and it allows us to sort of track what's being tested each round, what were the fails, linking those to bugs, and also, linking them to the actual devices that they were tested on. Uh,
right.
we have an internal device lab that we're testing pretty much everything on real devices, which is a huge benefit for a lot of companies that don't want to build their own, or again, they're in that startup mode where they haven't even thought about, testing it on any device that wasn't the one right in front of them. So,
Sure.
allows us to sort of track that over time, and it gives a lot more insight into a bug when it's only affecting one device or one OS compared to, a global issue. So,
So would you say that's one of Plus QA's specialty is the accessibility testing? That sounds
yeah,
like
for
you guys
sure.
know quite a bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. Again, I think we have a kind of a dedicated team to accessibility just because it is such a nuanced space. Um, and some clients come to us only for that. They just are looking for an accessibility audit. They either do the rest of the QA internally or use sort of some other system besides kind of manual front end QA. a lot of clients come to us and it's alongside, and I think that's kind of been the best benefit is we see people looking at accessibility earlier in the process and thinking about it as they're designing an app, as they're making those first alpha builds, and not sort of like an afterthought of like, oh, we should also do accessibility, and realizing some of the features that were really cool are really hard to use, if you need
Sure.
assistive technology. So
Wow. Okay. Okay. Now for the big question, right? So, what do you see the future of QA in terms of your company, as well as just the direction of the industry? And
yeah.
plus QA gonna move with that in the right in the hopefully the right direction.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah. We want to move in the right direction, of course. It's funny. I always it's one of those questions. It's like, and I'm always kind of subscribed to the theory. If someone tells you exactly what the future's like, they're probably trying to sell you something. And, I think that the one thing I always kind of go back to is in my 13, 14 years in this industry, like we've seen a lot of different tools, a lot of different ideas. We've seen the rise of, automation's going to take over everything. AI is now going to take over everything. And I think the thing we always go back to is there's always kind of been the same quality principles that have remained the same. Team needs results they can trust. That's the true if you're doing automation. You want to trust that those fails are actual fails. When you're
Mm,
using, manual QA, you want to trust that testers know what they're doing. They have that experience. AI is in that phase now where we're not exactly sure if we trust everything we see. And then I think, again, I think one of the things is being flexible. That's something that Plus QA has really benefited from. And I think um, being able to adapt to many different systems and really quickly. So when we look at like what's the future, obviously AI is going to be a part of that. It's going to be a part of every corner of the world, it looks like, not just QA, but the dev process in general, but also, the general world around us. So obviously that's going to be part of it. I think when we do look at those tools and how to adopt them, how to build some internally, we are still kind of always going back to those principles that we're trying to support, which is, does this help us seem more trustworthy? Does this help us find more accurate bugs? Can it speed up the process? Obviously, people want things yesterday, and faster is better if you can trust it. But the trust is a big part of it. And then again, I think it's the same thing: being flexible, not being too locked into one thing, um, not really subscribing to the one size fits all method of whoever's trying to sell the next big technology. Uh,
mhm.
but I think where PlusQ has really thrived in the last 14 years is that ability to adapt. You brought up accessibility. That wasn't part of the original Plus QA offerings, right? And it
Mhm.
became one after we said, hey, this is an interesting part of the industry. Not a lot of people know about it. We spent some time internally just doing some research and figuring out what are people doing now? What is accessibility? What is it that we can kind of offer and feel confident in, and we grew our knowledge internally, and then started speaking to other clients and saying, hey, have you thought about this? And 6 7 years ago we would say, hey, have you thought of the idea of testing for accessibility as well alongside front end? And people would be like, I don't know what that is, no thanks, not in the budget.
Mm,
Some people would be like, I've never heard of that, tell me more. And would kind of, we would either do a trial or do a test with them, and they would be like, wow, this is really interesting. And then, I'd say 2 3 years ago, it really shifted, and people came to us saying, hey, what do you know about accessibility? I've been tasked with this. And now we have, it's awesome because now we have QA managers coming to us saying, hey, we're working on accessibility, like how can you help? This is what we've already done internally. And that's always good to hear from a QA standpoint. It's not like an afterthought, and it's not going to be completely broken. There's some early days of starting accessibility tests, and it was 20 minutes into testing for the day, it was like, this doesn't work on voiceover at all. Here's your
right.
big bug. We're going to stop testing to save budget and time, but like there's a lot here to do. So I think just being able to evolve, being a smaller company allows us to be nimble, and the owners are happy to sort of adopt new technologies when we can kind of prove that they're going to be valuable, and they're not that interested in just picking up the next new thing and trying to make it work. So uh,
Sure.
I think that's probably smart for most companies. Obviously, I'm biased; it's working for us, but it's really suited Plus QA in with changes, and I think it will in the future as well, because I don't think that mindset has changed no matter what the new tech is.
Right, right. You brought up an important word in the QA business, and that's trust. So whether it's manual test results or automated test results or AI test results, the whole thing is about trusting the results, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And again, I think, we are, as a service company, we are working with a lot of different products, and we're seeing a lot of things right on the edge of the technology, and it allows us to bring that, to other projects and learn, and I think it helps build that trust, because people are like, wait, we didn't even think of this, or like, this is a perspective that we really appreciate from the
Hmm.
outside. So yeah, it is super important.
Wondering what would you recommend a tester to learn if they were entering the field now? What should they learn when they're, what's important for a tester?
Yeah. I've actually been able to come to the conference for a couple years. So I think one of the big things that I really like about this conference is that people come with a lot of different points of view, and there's space to talk about them, and there's comfort in expressing new ideas. So I think the one big thing that I would sort of support is critical thinking. Um, it's the part that allows you to adapt to new tech. It's the part that it allows you to adapt to new process, and it lets you question things, not just reading a test case, following it by the T, but really exploring, what it is that the test is trying to accomplish.
How would you define critical thinking? How does somebody learn critical thinking? It's not something that you learn in school, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, hopefully you can learn in school. But again, I think part of it is being curious, right? And I think
Uh-huh.
especially in the QA world in the beginning, you're often handed a set of test cases you didn't write. And so you read them, you execute them, you say plus, fail, blocked, move on. And I think,
Right.
it starts at that level. It starts with sort of questioning, like, what is it that I'm testing? Is this sort of testing that full feature? Is there a different way to test this? Can I talk to my lead? How would I write this test case? I think that's, kind of the beginning of that. I think as you go on in the process, it's starting to talk to devs and understand the process, and looking at a design and thinking, how would I write these test cases, or what are the tests that need to be done to sort of prove this is working? And again, I think it can be, sometimes I've heard testers talk about kind of taking on different personas, right? Like, even from a manual QA standpoint, like, you're the tech savvy teen who's on their phone all the time, or you're, someone who's new to the technology, and, like, how you might interact with those things. What are those things that make a lot of sense? Is it hard to find things? Is it easy to find things? Things like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think also, some of the critical thinking is not assuming that because it worked yesterday, it's going to work today. We
Mm-hmm.
see that sometimes in the QA world. We go like, I ran that test yesterday, and nobody touched the code there, right? That's the famous last words, like, we didn't touch code there. How is there new bugs? And there's always a chance that things are interacting in a different way, or you're doing it a different way. And I think a lot of that is where I kind of see that critical thinking piece for testers being important.